Hello, thank you for having me back in your life again. I greatly appreciate it. And welcome back to guest starring Sam. Today, I was thinking that we could talk a little bit about the way in which we imagine power. In Star Wars, the Emperor is imagined as a big bad. He's the ultimate architect of evil. He's the ultimate architect of empire. With him, it's portrayed as though empire and evil and coercion is built around a single individual. And as portrayed in the end of episode 6, with his defeat, it ends that evil. Now, the expanded universe, or whatever they call it, after episode 6, really goes ahead and adjusts and changes it, so that way it really shows the complexness of it. But they still stick pretty hard to the idea that the Empire had a lot of collapse, and that can be tied to the way that the Force works in Star Wars. But the idea that power works like that is not accurate, and I think that Andor really highlighted in a lot of ways the ways in which power is a multi-center thing. It's polycentric, even though there's an emperor and he's the final hub and say of this, of these deeds of the power of the empire in order to justify things. The fact of the matter is that he is a single node, and he might be a systemic node, kind of like what we discussed previously regarding the way in which the presidency can work, or the way in which great men such as Napoleon or Genghis Khan or William the Conqueror can work. But the fact of the matter is, it's an entire network of power. And in a lot of ways, the emperor was foolish in order to go ahead and grab power the way that he did. In order for the emperor, in order to solidify power around himself, it did make him that ultimate figure upon which all legitimacy could rest. But what it also did was it made him the only target for that power. If I was the emperor and I was attempting to gain ultimate authority, I would have done it more like Augustus and Julius Caesar's heir, Octavian, Julius Caesar's stepson and nephew. He did not delete the Senate. He did not remove all power from the people. If anything, he kept the masquerade of power far longer, and he was merely the first among equals. This allowed him to solidify power in all kinds of ways, while allowing the popular blame of the time to still exist with the assemblies and with the magistrates and even with the Senate. And he was able to go ahead and use that as a way to distribute his blame. And so if the Emperor Palpatine already had that kind of network of power, that he was able to so effectively control the Senate, he was able to so effectively control the coalition of, or what was it, the alliance, or the coalition of independent planets, or whatever it was called, I forget, I apologize. But if he was able to effectively control that already through his network, then it would be far more effective for him and the Sith long term in order to still brand the Jedi as, traitors and have them eliminated. But it would have been more effective for him to just stay the chancellor for a longer period of time and then step down, in the same way that Deng Xiaoping in China was able to step down and still retain all that power and influence around him. It was a long trick for a lot of monarchs throughout history for them to name their heir to the emperorship or the kingship, and then they themselves step down while continuing to actually rule. This was extremely effective and have run long term in places like Japan, for example, where the emperor stepped down and abdicated the throne, and his son took over. So if the emperor really wanted to go ahead and control power and maintain control, in episode 3 he went and declared an empire. He went and declared himself emperor. He would have stayed a scarred chancellor who was heroic and became helped create more order for the system, but he would have spread the blame for that order over the entire system. And a truly effective system works like that. It allows you to internalize the power dynamics that exist, right? It doesn't move the blame up the chain. It doesn't let you say, oh, it is always Bob. Bob is the only evil one. Bob is the one who stops it. Because first off, that's not true at all. Because all power is network. All leadership is oligarchical, even the absolutist monarchical leadership. Even the most strong tyrant, whether it's Stalin or Hitler or Mao, they were still the main node of legitimacy within an oligarchy. Stalin did amass all of that power to himself, but he did so by planting his people throughout the Soviet Union, allowing the Soviet Union to continue to be legitimate. And what he was saying, what he did, was that he was just the general secretary. And only later on in his life, near the end, did he take on more offices and more direct power that was legitimate like that. And instead, he continued to allow the Congress of Soviets, followed by the Supreme Soviet and the Politburo and the Communist Party generally, in order to retain that power, retain that legitimacy, so that way they were blamed. The problem, obviously, with the Soviet Union was it still created a monopolistic form of power. So rather than having multiple distributed power nodes that reinforced each other, he created a single node, which he inherited more or less from Lenin, that he then developed. So the emperor came in. We don't see any party politics taking place within the Galactic Republic, but I'm sure that there was such a thing, especially with a massive massive organization like the Galactic Synod that was just so numerous, that there was undoubtedly those types of organizations that already existed, even if the representation to the Senate was undefined based on the films. With the way that the United States works, for example, it's a duopoly of parties, right? And these two parties really are able to control the entire conversation, not because they make other parties illegal, but because of the way that they absorb the arguments from parties which are problematic for them and move their own ideological bounds in order to go ahead and to consume the alternatives. And that's why you can end up with an extremely wide range of views, both within the Republican and the Democratic parties in the United States. And this works for other duopolistic national governments, such as the United Kingdom and a number of others. Those that are more distributed, that are more based off of different types of electoral systems, allow for a greater divergence of party platforms and the turnover of parties. Now, this is even more robust within economics in the United States and the capitalist world, because of the way in which major corporations are not only able to diversify their holdings in order to go ahead and be seen as multiple different things, but also able to form a small cabal of competing things. So in the United States, there are antitrust laws which are supposed to fight against a company which essentially has complete control over the market, over a particular thing. But even when those are broken up and smashed, it still leaves just a handful of major companies. It's not as though it creates a grand distribution of power. And so once again, if there was an Emperor Palpatine that existed within a capitalist world, he would be a single node of economic power, legal power, that would be able to cause undue influence. Because while the emperor was able to make himself the absolutist legal framework for holding things, he was also able to change the conversation amongst those who rebelled against the power structure to allow them to be unified against the emperor. If the power system is distributed, again, across multiple parties, multiple economic foundations, and it's truly systemic, right? It's seen as systemic rather than seen as surrounding a single individual, then it truly changes the conversation from one where people can easily rally around, hey, we're against the emperor, you're against the emperor, that's great, into one which is like, well, yeah, these abuses are horrible, right? So this thing that took place by this company, yes, that's horrible, but it's seen as an outlier because of the way that we view the system, and we view ownership of that system as though we have control and we have power. And I'm not saying that we don't, because we all are empowered. I remember a comic I saw one time, where it was one of the single pane comics, where the guy was standing at a podium, but he was on a board that hung out over a cliff, and all the people were standing there holding this one board in place. And the argument that it was obviously making was that if the people moved away and the board fell, then he would have no power, because it's only through listening to him and obeying him that power exists. And that's true. We choose, we vote every day with our choices, with our actual votes, with our purchases, how to participate and what to participate in. Now, obviously we can't choose, we could choose to go off the grid and move into the woods and try to live off the land, sew our own clothes, etc. But the problems obviously are that would be an extreme personal deprivation, and there's really no reason that we need to cheat ourselves of all of the opportunity that exists in society in order to go ahead and help change the bar that exists around it. And also, at this point in world history, there is no wild wilderness to go to that's not owned by someone. There might be places which are owned by the federal government or owned by whatever government, but once again, those are governed by the same laws. There's no place that's out of the law that's not owned by someone or something. And so you would be violating countless laws. So we are all prisoners here, and therefore we are all being in the need to participate and practice this participation in the system. Now, we obviously can help change the system by the ways in which we interact with each other, by the ways in which we interact with organizations, by the organizations that we choose to participate in. And there is very valid ground to, in my opinion, to doing things that are the lesser of evils, because I don't want to be homeless, right? I don't want to be hungry, and I don't want anybody to be homeless or hungry. So a level of participation in order to ensure that we don't go homeless and hungry is absolutely necessary and honestly completely valid. So the question becomes, what do we do in order to go ahead and change the power dynamics so that way we can be more honest, more reasonable participants that are doing better for ourselves and the world. Now, there is no emperor, right, who would completely control and dominate this conversation, who we can all rally around. We can't say, oh, this individual is the one who controls it all. Oh, this individual is the one who owns it. Oh, this company is the one who owns it. Because that's not the case. It's distributed. And even ownership of those companies in the Western society and capitalist world is distributed. It's all about stock ownership, and it's about distributed ownership. It's about even making you an owner by allowing you to buy shares in it, so that way you have skin in the game and you're invested in the system. And so when that company that you've invested in does well, then you profit as well. And that's the argument. That's the argument behind profit sharing for corporations as well. The problem is obviously the level of change and control that you have over it. If you have deep ethical issues about anyone going hungry, well, that's great. And they say, hey, you should do some charity work or something. In the United States, there's no broad social contract in order to go ahead and say, hey, no one goes hungry, period. Does not matter. No one goes homeless. Does not matter. Some countries go closer to it. Some countries go farther from it. But even the countries in the developed world, in the core of the capitalist system, they still benefit from extraction and power politics that continue to abuse less developed, in debt countries that continue to have their resources and energy utilized in order to develop. So in order to actually understand the dynamics of power, we can't just rely on blaming Bob. We can't blame some easy conspiracy. As much as I would like to be able to go, oh look, if we just kill all of these individuals who are in this file, then it'll magically be fixed. It won't. Because the abuses that happened, the abuses that continue to happen, are not a result of some secret cabal doing magical deeds, worshiping some individual who gives them power. It's a result of the intersection of incentives and constraints and coercion, both soft and hard. I don't know if you guys watched Angel. It's a fantastic show. But there was an episode where Angel was going to go and get the senior partners. She was going to beat them. She was going to beat back that evil. And this gentleman said, I'll take you to the source of their power. Let's go. And they got in the elevator, and then they went there, and they opened, and it was our world. Our world was the source of their power. Because it's individual decisions. It is not a one individual. It is not one hub of power. It's not a single generator that causes this. It's a cumulative factor of all of us making decisions together, of us making allowances, of us choosing to constrain ourselves, censor ourselves, and censor each other. Now, I'm not calling for unabashed anarchy where everyone does whatever they want regardless of the impact of others. If anything, I'm making an argument the other way. I'm saying that we should stop treating each other as though we're objects. We're also co-participants in a property system, that money is the ultimate means to understand our relationship with strangers, both those within our community and those throughout the world, as well as with the strangers who are coming across a border. We need to instead understand each individual as a equally valid moral node in a network that we participate in. And that network obviously does call for social compacts, social contracts, ways of appreciating and understanding each other, de-escalation of conflicts, and the understand that other people have an equal valid right to eat, to be housed, to participate in life in all the beautiful ways that we can, to view art, and to just laugh with their friends, right? All of these things are completely valid, but they shouldn't be premised on property relationships, whether that's actual land or it's company ownership, or whether it's the accumulation of medium tokens of financial trade. Instead, we need to go ahead and move beyond that and utilize this money and utilize our abilities in a different way. It makes me think of the Soviet Union, right? The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, but it didn't have a lot of people die. It didn't have all of its economic resources vanish overnight. It didn't lose some great military war. It lost a cultural war. It lost a belief in itself. It wasn't even conquered from the outside as much as from within. It lost its own legitimacy. It lost its dream. And once people stopped believing in it, then even the soldiers didn't want to fight for it because they didn't believe in it. And so it fell apart. And we can change the world. We do every day. Every day we wake up, we go out there, and we make decisions. And those decisions either reinforce the world we live in, or they challenge and change the world we live in. But so is everyone else. Every single person. No one's an NPC. Everybody is a player character. And we need to treat them that way. We need to treat every other person we meet like they're a player character. And there's no single NPC, there's no single player character who's like Emperor Palpatine, who sits above all and determines what it is. And once we defeat him, it's all done. There's no final boss. There's only the continuation of the struggle to be more honest, more morally notey, more understanding of our collective and individual responsibilities to ourselves and to each other. I think I covered good ground today. Let me know what you think. I think all the people are saying like and subscribe, right? So thank you very much for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.